The UN urges the United States to give up the First Amendment to fight racism. The new narrative that has emerged over the past few days is that free speech, freedom of expression, and other privileges granted to us by the Constitution are to blame for the death in Charlottesville. It would be amazing what good could be done in this world if this amount of outrage was present whenever there was any type of attack. You notice that the same people who are convinced that the entire country are Nazis now after Charlottesville are the same people that say you cannot judge all of Islam by the dozens and dozens of attacks each month. As soon as one Antifa person died and many others injured, there is now a witch hunt going on against anyone speaking up for free speech. Just take a look at what happened to Joey Gibson in the Patriot Prayer Rally over the past few days. Now the UN, who has been so helpful in places like Liberia, Syria, Korea, and any other place on the globe, wants to amend our country's constitution. First of all, these paper-pushing bullies wouldn't know freedom if Uncle Sam himself came over and cock-slapped them. How in the hell are we supposed to take them seriously when they ask us to censor our own people because one person died? Look, and I'm not trying to downplay the tragedy here, but remember the Pulse nightclub shooting? The Donald on Reddit was the only place on the website that allowed discussion of this topic, which even included threads with blood donation centers, which were being banned in default subs like World News, News, and Politics. The reason? Islamophobia. They didn't care about silencing people then for the sake of anyone's safety, and they don't care now. They are using the death of this woman to paint all non-radical leftists as racist Nazis, which is their last line of defense. After you call someone Hitler and they are able to prove you wrong, there is nothing else for you to say, which is perhaps why Antifa is so eager to attack people with their backs turned. They don't want conversation. They want to morally grandstand, and they want a gold star from their peers that are putting them up to this. With regards to the UN's request, Stephen Groves, Chief of Staff to the Ambassador to the UN, commented that the committee's recommendations stray into areas of American life that are far outside the committee's mandate and supposed competence. The Washington Post even came out with an article themselves, claiming that people purposefully use the First Amendment as a way of harassing people. This is another reach where, sure, some trolls exist, but to be so willing to give up your own freedoms for the sake of emotional euphoria is pathetic. As Ben Franklin once said, those who are willing to sacrifice liberty for the sake of security deserve neither. Do these people realize that they can be on the receiving end of these new censorship rules in just a few years? In a few years, maybe it will be considered hate speech to call Trump orange, or maybe it will be illegal to talk about violence against him even. Can you imagine how quick they would suddenly clutch their pearls about how much free speech matters when it comes to mocking conservatives and other people who aren't chugging the social Marxist Kool-Aid? We've reached a point to where people don't even want to hear you refuse that you're a Nazi anymore. They want you to just lay down and let you beat them and call you a Nazi and an intolerant, hateful bigot as they try to literally put you in the hospital. The irony isn't lost on anyone else, but is certainly lost on these, whatever you want to call them. So I have a few ideas on how to deal with all of this nonsense. We have to have arrests made. We have to arrest lawfully these agitators when they commit violence. So we can go to places where there are no masks allowed. That would help quell the turnout rate, I would imagine. The people who do show up that still intend to commit violence, if we can ensure that it's in an area where the police will actually do their jobs, say if the mayor isn't a complete radical left-winger, then maybe that would be the best place to hold these types of movements. Maybe even bait them out into areas where they wouldn't be protected by their political cronies. As far as the UN making a request to temporarily suspend the Constitution or whatever it is that they want, I don't think it'll ever happen. I think even the average American who isn't into all of this nonsense would be outraged. There was a recent poll that showed that 85% of Americans value free speech over protected feelings, over hate speech. It's overwhelming. Americans value their ability to speak their mind. Can you imagine a scenario where the government was able to temporarily suspend the First Amendment? Do you think they would give it back? Do you think they would overturn it? I mean, once the toothpaste is out of the bottle, there's no getting it back in there. Once the government gets its fingers into something, typically it's almost impossible to pull it out. And one last thing before we go. According to a new poll, 85% of Americans say free speech is more important than political correctness. It also says that when it comes to fighting for the right for free speech, some 73% of Americans agreed with Voltaire's famous maxim, "I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it." So I'm going to go ahead and leave you with that. I'll have a link to all 3 of the articles I cited here in the description below, and let me know what you think of all of this. I personally don't think it's going to get far. I don't think anybody's going to take anything the UN says seriously. Although I have to add, Zoe Quinn recently went to the UN and called herself an anti-First Amendment advocate. So there is a rising effort to amend the First Amendment, so to speak. Maybe even get rid of it entirely. These crazy people really do want to tame the Wild West. The digital Wild West, I mean.